Hey guys, so today I'm doing my review on Forging a Path to Greatness, The Rise of a Future Leader by author DeShawn Williams. Here's the book. So I finished the book about 2 days ago, and I give it a 6 out of 7 on a 10-star scale. It was a good read. I guess the only reason I gave it a 6 or a 7 is because I know his story's not over yet. And I felt like I definitely want more details in a book. But when it comes to talking about this book right here, I guess we're going to start with before the time he was DeShawn Williams, when his name actually used to be DeMarco Rashawn Andrews. DeMarco Deshawn Andrews, I have to say, was a really interesting kid. Growing up, he had a mother, a brother, hardly knew his father, and he had a difficulty with women, which I can now definitely say is justified when you go based off of how his mother treated him. I can definitely see how the many car accidents throughout his life have definitely built into his character. I also have to say that DeMarco slash now DeShawn Williams has become one hell of a man. And I'm glad this book is called Forging a Path to a Future Leader, because there's so much more for him to get there. I feel like taking on jobs as a security guard for different companies and working his way around and running a podcast and volunteering and getting awards. I feel like all the damage he went through as a little kid and his biggest supporter being his grandparents definitely shapes a person, because through all the hell people go through in life, you really could just turn out to be an awful villain of a person. But this person that wrote this book is nothing like that whatsoever. I feel when it comes to this book, the way a character is introduced tells you exactly what's going to happen. So in chapter 1, the way Mr. DeShawn Williams introduces himself says, "I am DeMarco Rashawn Andrews, born on February 11, 1998 in Greenwood, South Carolina." He says, "I am the youngest of 2 siblings. My childhood wasn't filled with laughter and giggle. It was a time of trials and tribulations." I feel like after reading that, the rest of the book tells you that you're about to go on a journey with him through the hell of ups and downs, the struggles of a black man, and how he wanted to and did become greater and better. And I feel like that says a lot, especially when I open a book, because I feel that the way you introduce yourself, the way you tell your story, is the way you want life to be. And no one's story is perfect. Maybe some people grew up more fortunate than you did. I can tell you that I've had ups and downs, and Mr. DeShawn Williams definitely had his ups and downs, especially with like childhood teachers. He just didn't really get along with female teachers, and then the struggle of his grandfather's health as a young boy and being adopted by his grandparents. And he was a little boy who just wanted to feel love and go after things. He had so much shaping to do. And after reading this book, I realized like everything he's been through really could have been the beginning of a villain story. Truly, truly could have been. But it's not. He took all that anger, all the hatred, all the hell he's been through, and used it as a powerful source to become the man he wants to be. And I think a lot of us should aspire to be that way. I feel like this book is only the beginning for a man who is meant for greatness. At the age of 4 years old, DeMarco Rashawn Andrews was expelled from preschool. And I know what you're thinking. You might think, oh, maybe he was just a troublemaker. Wrong. Let me just read you a piece of chapter 2. During my time in the care of the Department of Social Services, my brother and I become accustomed to fending for ourselves, doing as we please without restriction. As we moved from one home to another, I found myself in the unfamiliar position of being an only child, isolated from interaction with other children. This lack of socialization became glaring, apparent when I started preschool. He felt alone. He felt almost as if he had no one, and the only person he could depend on at the age of 4 years old was himself. It tells you that he was forging this path. This was a path he was choosing to take as you continue to read this book. And when you're alone and have to fend for yourself and going through the struggle of which he did, I honestly wouldn't have blamed him if he turned it out to be mean and unkind and uncaring. But he shows improvement that he wanted to do more. But it shows that his growing up was a struggle. And lots of us do struggle. A lot of us go through hell. And not most of us are brave enough to speak the truth of going through such hell. And I feel like he was a very smart kid at the age of 4 years old. It might have not been perfect, but he definitely was already coming to the fact that he had so much to do on his own at a young age. Let me continue reading just a bit more from this chapter. There were moments when my grandfather had to intervene, disciplining me and sending me back to class. The cycle continued until the preschool administration finally reached a breaking point and informed my grandparents that they could no longer handle my behavior at the age of 4 years old. In the heart of chapter 2, his behavior still continued to the 4th grade, where male teachers didn't pose any issues with young DeMarco Andrews, but female teachers did. But personally, what shocked me was the statement and conversation that happened between DeMarco's grandmother, the mom, and what he heard as a young kid. So I'll read some of that to you. Amidst the challenges, 4th grade brought a glimmer of hope as I was officially adopted by my grandparents. The adoption process was set in motion, and my mother temporarily resided with us until she could stand on her own feet. It was during this time that a significant moment unfolded. My grandmother, sensing the need for change, and asked my mother if she planned to secure her own place, find employment, and obtain a car. What happened next shocked him to the core. And I know if I was to be a young kid and hear this following statement, I would be a broken child. in front of my grandmother and me, my mother responded, stating that I was no longer her responsibility, but rather my grandmother's burden to bear. He said the weight of those words hit him like a bombshell, leaving him questioning his own worth in his own eyes. Now, I'm going to tell you something, because I'm going to stop right there. No child, no child that you bring into this world should ever be treated like that. A child, and especially one like DeMarco Andrews, should never be treated with such disrespect, as if they're a burden to the world, as if they're useless. DeMarco Andrew was not a fucking burden. He just had a terrible, terrible mother. And I think sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you are born with. But at least he didn't allow his awful mother determine or decide his future. I feel like as a child, that is terrible to hear. Yet I feel like that moment shaped him and makes him realize today that he is a far way better person than his mother will ever be. And that the strength that he has to go forward and to achieve everything that he wants is astonishing. It's amazing. And to even write a book about your childhood when you've been through such terrible shit is an achievement in itself. Look, I could sit here and just praise the fact that I think Mr. DeShawn Williams wrote an amazing book about how he came from the bottom and rose up and how he's continuing. But we're going to ponder on his mother just a little bit longer, because I can't believe she said that out of her own mouth and her child heard that. And then, well, the adoption proceeded and the official name changed from DeMarco Rashawn Andrews into DeMarco Rashawn Williams, which rightfully so. And then for the fact that comes later that even though he got adopted by his grandparents, he said the infliction of that still lingered on him, that the first woman, the woman he trusted most, is what he said in his book, is the one that hurt him and has made his relationship with women impossible, that he's unsure that he could ever trust women again because of his mother's actions, because of her words, what she's done to him. Like I said, this is really the beginning of a villain arc, a villain era, if he had chosen to go down that path. Glad he didn't. But yeah, no, I don't just dislike the mother. I just I just couldn't deal with such a person. I would mean mug this person so horribly for treating her son that way. And the fact that he can't trust women, I completely understand. Because you don't want to get hurt again, and no one does. And I believe he grew from it, bit by bit, thanks to his loving grandmother. So I'm done with my chapter 2 rant. I'm done my rant on Mr. Williams' mother, how I feel, how I just don't like her. But then again, this is just my opinion as a reader of this book. How I feel as a woman reading this book. But we're going to move on from my opinions of Mr. Williams' mother in chapter 2, and we're going to talk about chapter 3, which has my favorite person in this book all time is Grandpa Williams. No offense, author, I think you're cool, you're great, but Grandpa Williams is just so wholesome, so real, and I feel like he's very relatable, and I'll mention more on why I like Grandpa Williams. There's this cute interaction with little DeMarco Williams and Grandpa Williams where he's waiting for the bus to go to school and his grandpa emerges from his bedroom and he politely asks his little DeMarco for his phone and he pretends to call Batman and Robin and asks if Batman and Robin can be his sidekicks for the day. And it makes little DeMarco laugh, and I think that's just so cute, so wholesome. So I'm going to read you a little bit of that. So it says, fast forward to October 19th, 2010. I stood by the living room door, anticipating the arrival of my bus, while my grandfather slowly emerged from his bedroom, eager to join me. Despite his weakened state, he attempted to brighten my day with a playful request for his cell phone. Our conversation unfolded in a light-hearted exchange as he humorously mentioned calling Batman and Robin, hoping they were available to be his sidekicks that day. Laughter filled the air at 7:15 in the morning, and I couldn't help but feel grateful for that cherished moment. I feel like that is such a wholesome interaction between a grandson and his grandfather. It is probably like one of my favorite things about this book so far. Actually, no, I think it might be my number one moment of this book. It's just that wholesome interaction. And then later on, I find out about Grandpa Williams' death. So, pretty much what happens is little DeMarco gets a call to the school. There was a call made to the school for little DeMarco to leave class, and he's unsure of what's going on. And pretty much he finds out that his grandfather had just passed away, and it was sad, it was emotional, and he's over here mourning and grieving, and he tells his teachers what's going on. And then things that it never should have happened is some pitiful little midget was bullying little DeMarco. I'm like, what in the world? That makes me mad right there. Someone lost someone dearly important to them, and you feel the right to bully them? But let me read you guys some of this, because this made my blood boil. A class bully seized the opportunity to mock and belittle little DeMarco, claiming that he was lying, seeking attention, and playing a game to guilt trip others. The insensitivity cut deep, and his anger boiled over, prompting him to storm out of the classroom and seek assistance in the assistant principal's office. I'm not even gonna lie. That's probably the best thing little DeMarco could have did is left that classroom. Because for me, I'd be upset, I'd be all sorts of angry, and if the bully kept provoking me, that bully was gonna get hurt. And I'm not one to encourage violence, I am one to go seek help and advice. But you don't mock someone who just lost a family member. You just don't do that. Like, what kind of cruel person are you to do such a thing? Like, he lost his grandfather, the person that meant the world. And I get that bully didn't know that, because he didn't know the half of little DeMarco's story. But you shouldn't do that to a person. Like, personally, Like, I would have kicked the little bully, punched the little bully, called the little bully's mom, just pretty much anything and everything, because you don't do that. It was the saddest little, it's the second, like, saddest moment for me in this book, besides the passing of Grandpa Williams, who, like I said, is my favorite character. So I explained to you why he's my favorite character, favorite person, because, you know, this is not a made-up story, this is a real-life story. Grandpa Williams is my favorite because he reminds me of my grandfather. May he rest in peace. I'm going to stray a little from the book to tell you just a bit about why Grandpa Williams is my favorite character. So, my grandfather, Ray Watson Sr., my dad's father, played a tremendous role in the upbringing of me and my sibling. So I am the older sister of 4, and much like DeMarco Williams, I was pulled out of class, brought home, and told the news that my grandfather had passed. I was devastated, I was sad, and it was the first moment in my life I had personally seen my father actually cry. Because his dad was his world, just like I was his world, his kids was his world, his wife was his world, but we loved our grandfather dearly. And eventually I had to go back to school, and I was still grieving. I think I cried for about 2 weeks when I lost my grandfather. And that's why I feel like Grandpa Williams and DeMarco Williams' story about his grandfather in this chapter is so relatable, because similar thing happened to me. I was bullied throughout most of early childhood, and my bully had no compassion because they bullied me on the fact of the passing of my grandfather too. And I don't talk about it much, but Grandpa William reminds me of my grandfather. And I felt like my grandfather was just as funny, just as compassionate and sweet as Grandpa Williams is to little DeMarco. But that's a little sidebar about me and why I like Grandpa Williams' story, part of the story so much. But I'll continue with the rest of my review. We're going to do a quick summary of Chapter 4. So, life goes on for DeMarco Williams. He graduates high school. He's looking forward to festivities. He goes in search of his girlfriend so he can celebrate with family and friends. He gets a job at a national park. He feels his health and his grandmother's health start to deteriorate as his work schedule goes on, working at this national park. His relationship ends due to disagreement with his schedule and so on. And then sooner or later, you have DeMarco Williams starting college, is what most of Chapter 4 is about. And there's difficulties with college in the beginning. Obviously, it's new, you're nervous, excited. But that's kind of the summary of Chapter 4, so I'm going to skip along a bit. So in Chapter 5, we get talks of DeShawn Williams, DeMarco Williams, which one you prefer to him as a security guard, a supervisor security guard, and how they celebrated like small milestones like his 21st birthday, which he truly appreciated. There are some downfalls in Chapter 5 with him receiving a pay cut and having to work for another company due to a staffing meeting which he had no prior notice about, which is really unfair. chapter 5 is definitely a chapter I would recommend people to read because I would suggest people read this book. Chapters 6 and 7 are the last two chapters in the book, and I'll let you guys form your own opinions on those last two chapters. What I will say is I feel Mr. Williams has become exactly the person that most people need to hear from. Exact proof that you can come from the worst type of situation and still make it great and still keep going, because life isn't over. And Mr. Williams is still improving and building upon life as we speak. I think this book was great, and I feel like anyone who needs to feel inspired to get up, to volunteer, to build a legacy of their own should read this book. Even if you don't feel like you're any of those things, I think you should still read the book because it was definitely an amazing read, something I would probably read again if I had downtime. I feel like it is greatly inspiring to want to be a leader in a community, to want to leave behind a legacy for people to remember you once you're gone. I feel all the moments in the book are relatable, even if you can't personally relate to it. It is something anyone could relate to. I feel like you should read the book and find out if you haven't already. I thank you for your time with my review. I hope it was an enjoyable ride for all of you as it was for me. And I'll see you in one of my next videos. I'm Santasia Douglas. I'm glad to have made your day. See ya.